Hey, it's Jack, and this video is called 3 Bizarre Ways That You Can Stop Attracting Emotionally Unavailable Guys. Hi, I'm Jack Butler. I'm a relationship coach. If you're new to the channel, please come on, let's do this. Click here, subscribe, and then tap that bell notification so that you can receive new videos as soon as they come out. I release videos every week on relationships and personal growth. And by the way, if you haven't taken my free webinar, I'd love to invite you to do that. You can just click the link below this video. You can find a time that works for you in your time zone. It's called the 3 Keys to Being Relationship Ready. It's been getting rave reviews, and I promise you it will be some of the best investment of 90 minutes of your time. So do that if you haven't. Now, this video today, 3 bizarre things that you can do to stop attracting emotionally unavailable men. So I'm going to get right into it. The first thing that you can do to stop attracting emotionally unavailable guys is to ask a guy, when you're starting to get to know him a little bit, ask him if he's ever been in a committed relationship. What you might find is that emotionally unavailable guys are less likely to have been in one or more committed or long-term relationships, right? Emotionally unavailable guys, and again, this is just gross orienting generalization I'm giving you here, but they tend to be harder to get into a committed relationship, right? So if one of the things that goes with being emotionally unavailable might be that we are much more on the avoidance side when it comes to relationship, then you can just sort of look at someone's pattern in the past and you might be able to discern things. Now, of course, there are emotionally unavailable guys that have been in long-term marriages and have just been unavailable to their partners, and their partners have kind of gotten used to that, or eventually it's kind of not worked out. So this isn't a definitive thing, but it's just a sort of essence of a pattern that you might be able to notice. Another signature flavor sometimes of emotionally unavailable guys is that they are serial daters, right? So you get the sense that they're dating you, but they're dating a lot of other people at the same time, and that's not just for this cycle, but that's like ongoingly they do that. Or they have a pretty long history of having a lot of connections with different people that haven't really gone anywhere, right? Now, they might say something like they have high standards, right? Or they're fussy, and that may be true at one level. It may also be that that's a kind of subtle de-escalation of intimacy strategy. And I'm a fan, where possible, of just kind of getting into it and saying, hey, you know, what's been your past? What's been your experience? And what would it look like? What would have you want to be committed into a relationship? Like, when you think of being in a committed relationship, what comes up for you? And just starting to open up that conversation a little bit, because you might get a flavor that, you know what, this person isn't really that drawn to being in a committed relationship, which is totally fine, right? Every guy, every woman, every person, in my view, has their right to whatever they want, really. And whether that's, you know, full-on relationship, or whether that's, you know, very little relationship, super casual, whatever it is. We just want you to find someone that you can align with, which in this instance would be an emotionally available guy. So what you can do is actually just check out his past, check out his world, check out how he talks about previous relationships. Has he known heartbreak? Like, has his heart been invested enough that he's known heartbreak? Right? If he hasn't, that might be something you want to get curious about. Could be a little bit of a flag potentially. But that way you're not in the dark, and that way you're actually, before you get too attached or too many of your own feelings running, you can actually excavate a little bit, like, where is this person coming from? Because the past is really important when it comes into relationship. Now, that brings us to our second point of a bizarre way that you can avoid attracting an emotionally unavailable guy, is to actually find out, has this guy done any work? Has he done any inner work to heal or complete his past? You know, my bet is that for a lot of emotionally unavailable guys, there are reasons in their past, probably good reasons, why they've been emotionally unavailable. Maybe they experienced an overbearing or engulfing experience from one of their caregivers, or possibly their mother, right? So they learned how to be more emotionally constrained and restrained because they didn't feel like that was safe to do. Maybe they had a kind of severe upbringing where anything that was emotional was kind of beaten out of them, or it was denigrated, it was criticized, and so they learned how not to do that. Maybe they had situations where their caregivers didn't take particularly great care of them, so they had to learn pretty early on not to be too emotionally vulnerable, and that they would take care of themselves. And so they're particularly self-reliant, and they kind of look to themselves first, and they don't really look to the emotional support system of another person in the way that a lot of us do, right? It's almost like safer for them to be an island, to be on their own, to be self-sufficient, and they kind of want to minimize the contact that they have, or the dependency they have on other people. So again, you can get curious. You can include in the conversation a little bit about kind of what's your orientation to personal growth. Have you done any healing work? Have you been in coaching or therapy? Tell me a little bit more about your family of origin? Like, what was it like growing up? Now, these may not be common topics of conversation for you. You might be like, well, that's strange. You know, I'm going on a date and suddenly I'm like, tell me about your mother, right? But if you want to be in a mature and conscious relationship, at some point that stuff has to come in, I think. And maybe it's not first date material, but if you're starting to get to know someone enough that you're thinking, yeah, I would like to see this connection go somewhere, it might be that it's already early enough for you to explore some of these things. And by the way, he has a right to not go there. So you can ask him, like, would you be cool to talk about this? Or you could reveal some of your own experience first. But it's useful territory for you to get a clear read on what is actually going on. And just as importantly, if you really want to build something that's more conscious with someone, you kind of want to know, what is this guy's orientation to doing his own work, right? Bluntly. Because things are going to come up, you're going to trigger each other, you're going to have disrepair, you're going to have attachment wounds, you're going to have all sorts of things that likely will come up if you're really going to have a conscious relationship. And so you want a partner in that, I believe, and you want someone that has an orientation to that. If the guy has never done any inner work, or he scoffs or is not interested, it's probably a good sign that he's not the guy that you're going to have the relationship that you want with. And then the third thing that you can discern and that might militate against you attracting an emotionally unavailable guy is you can get curious, how much is this guy in his heart? How much is he in his heart? One aspect of being emotionally unavailable can be that we're kind of disconnected from our own emotional center or our own heart center. You know, I'm kind of using those words somewhat interchangeably. So you might get a read on, before you are particularly bonded or connected, or even looking at how does he open his heart to you, just notice how open is his heart in his life. You know, are there people that he cares about, that he kind of has an ongoing connection with? Is there things in life that he cares about, that he shows up in a heartfelt way? Now, there is a little caveat I want to put in here. I know some of you really liked, in one of my other videos, I talked about the emotionally available, unavailable guy, right? This is a guy who's in his heart, who is able to connect. He's probably pretty emotionally literate. He might actually connect with you more than other men that you've experienced, and that he's loving and caring, and you really experience that. And that can sometimes be a very, very powerful experience for women to be on the receiving end of a guy that's more heart open than they're used to. And there's still a form of unavailability that can exist in that guy. You know, particularly if he hasn't really got his stuff together, if his career isn't really on track, if he hasn't really set his own foundation, and he doesn't really know who he is in a certain way, or he's not really kind of showing up in the world with his backbone, in his masculine essence, if he's a guy that has a masculine essence, then you might want to be a little bit careful there, because these guys can sometimes be heartbreakers. I can talk about them with a reasonable amount of literacy, because I was this guy sometimes in the past, where I could be really loving and really connected and really into the relationship, but it didn't actually mean that I was at a stage of my life where I could really settle down into a long-term committed partnership. So the emotionally available, unavailable guy is sometimes really confusing, because on one level, you're more connected to him than you've been to other men. On another level, you have to get a little bit sober and objective and say, is he really at a stage of his life where it makes sense for him to step into something in a committed way? Does he have enough kind of figured out? You know, this slightly terrible expression, but I'm going to use it because I know a lot of us use it. Does he have his shit together, right? Does he have his stuff, his life, his integrity, his purpose, his drive, his mission, his vision? Are these things online enough that it kind of makes sense for him to extend beyond that and to want to be in relationship? Or if not, sometimes what can be the case is that he's kind of using the relationship as a little bit of a substitute for actually getting out there and kind of doing him in the world in a real way, right? And he's kind of made the connection with you or someone else is kind of like his priority. That's where his time and attention's going. And it's not like he's really putting it into his own clarity of purpose. So that can be a little bit of a caveat. But that caveat said, a pretty good indication that a guy could be emotionally available is that he's actually in his heart. When you are connected to him, when you're present with him, when you guys are in a one-on-one, can you actually feel his heart? Can you feel his presence? He could be super whip smart. He could be a business genius. He could be a tech whiz kid. He could be all sorts of things. But can you be in your heart and emotional center enough and present enough in yourself to really discern what is in front of you? Can you actually connect with him in that way? Is there a kind of a heart vibration? And look, if that's not there, you don't have to make that wrong, right? We're all, wherever we are in terms of our own heart development, all of us probably have more heart-centered development to do. But if we're trying to help you nix this pattern, if your pattern has been, I attract emotionally unavailable men, we want to make sure that you're actually seeing what's in front of you. Now, the bonus thing I'm going to add here for you is that one of the ways to stop attracting emotionally unavailable men is to stop being so emotionally available yourself. If you're someone who is always touched ongoingly and kind of moved to the point that it's hard for you to hold it together, and you are constantly running around helping everyone, supporting them, taking care of things, if that's you, you might want to learn how to dial that back a little bit and kind of stay in your center, have your own back, keep your feet on the ground, and build your own foundation. Right? Because if you are ongoingly over-available, nature, life seems to like to balance polarities. So if you are overly emotionally available, what do you think life's going to give you? Yeah, that's right. It's probably going to give you a guy that's under-available because you guys kind of balance each other out. And something in you is attracted to him because he has access to something that you don't. He's able to disconnect from other people and take care of himself. Right? Or he's able to prioritize some of his own needs and desires before his empathy runs riot and takes over. So take a look at this with a little bit of curiosity. Normally, not always, but normally, if there's a pattern of you attracting emotionally unavailable guys, it's almost like your soul wants something of what they have. And that's why it keeps repeating the pattern until you learn, oh, when I get a little bit more centered in myself, I can be available to help, but I'm not just a helper. I'm not just as someone says something and I jump. You text me a message, boom, I have to text right back. I'm not just here for other people all the time. I'm also here for myself. I'm also here for me and my own foundation and my own purpose in this life. And when that gets more dialed in, my supposition, check it out for yourself with your own lived experience, is that you might be less attracted to emotionally unavailable guys because there's no longer something over there that is not something that you have access to. You can stand in your own self and power. And you might therefore, if you're not so emotionally gushy in a certain way, you might actually be able to attune and calibrate more and notice, what is this guy available for emotionally? Rather than I'm just treating him like a rescue animal, right? Or a bird that's wings have been broken and that I've got to go and kind of help. We want to nix that pattern. We want to stop you being the helper, the healer, the overextender, and want to have you more in your own center, your own power, and your own truth so that you can find a loving connection with a guy who is emotionally available to you, not just now, but somewhat ongoingly. That's my hope and prayer for you. Thank you so much for listening. Questions and comments below the video, as always. And hey, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.